Have you ever had one of those moments when everything looks normal on the outside, yet something inside you feels completely broken? You wake up, you go to work, you answer messages, you pay bills, you smile when people expect you to smile. But deep down, there is a question that follows you everywhere like a shadow. What am I doing with my life? Most people never say those words out loud. They carry them silently. They bury them under distractions, entertainment, endless scrolling, and busy schedules. But the question never disappears. It waits, it grows, and eventually it becomes impossible to ignore. What if I told you that feeling lost is not a sign that your life is falling apart? What if feeling lost is actually proof that your old identity is dying and a stronger version of you is trying to emerge? Because history is filled with people who felt exactly the way you feel right now. They felt confused, directionless, uncertain. They questioned themselves. They questioned their future. They questioned whether they were wasting their lives. One of those people was Marcus Aurelius. Today, people remember him as one of the greatest Stoic philosophers who ever lived. A Roman emperor, a symbol of wisdom and strength. But what most people don't realize is that Marcus spent much of his life battling uncertainty, pressure, fear, and self-doubt. He was not born confident. He was not born wise. He became those things through struggle. And that changes everything, because the modern world has convinced you that successful people always know where they are going. Social media shows perfect careers, perfect relationships, perfect lifestyles. Everyone seems certain. Everyone seems ahead. Everyone seems to have a plan. But that's an illusion. The truth is that most people are wandering through life, hoping they are moving in the right direction. The difference is that some people panic when they feel lost. Others use it as a turning point. And that is exactly what the Stoics understood thousands of years ago. They knew that confusion is not the enemy. Confusion is often the beginning of wisdom. Think about it. You cannot discover a new path until you realize the current one isn't working. You cannot become someone new until the old version of you starts to feel uncomfortable. You cannot find deeper meaning until the shallow things stop satisfying you. Feeling lost is painful because your mind wants certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants clear answers. But life doesn't work that way. Life is not a straight line. It is a series of seasons. There are seasons of growth, seasons of success, seasons of confidence, and there are seasons when everything feels unclear. The problem is that most people interpret uncertainty as failure. The Stoics interpreted it as preparation. Imagine standing in the middle of a dense forest. You cannot see the entire path ahead. You can only see a few steps. Most people refuse to move until they can see the entire journey. As a result, they remain stuck. Years pass. Opportunities disappear. Potential fades. The Stoic takes a different approach. He takes one step, then another, then another. Trusting that clarity comes through action, not before action. This is one of the greatest lessons you will ever learn. You do not think your way into clarity. You act your way into clarity. The career you are searching for may not reveal itself until you try something new. The purpose you are seeking may not appear until you leave your comfort zone. The confidence you want may not arrive until you do things while feeling afraid. Waiting for certainty is one of the fastest ways to waste your life, and that is where many people become trapped. They spend years preparing, years planning, years researching, years imagining, but never moving. They believe they need more information, more confidence, more motivation, more reassurance. What they actually need is courage. Courage is not certainty. Courage is movement, despite uncertainty. And once you understand that distinction, your life begins to change. Because the truth is that nobody knows exactly what they are doing. Not the entrepreneur, not the celebrity, not the millionaire, not the philosopher. Every human being is navigating uncertainty. The only difference is how they respond to it. Some freeze, some complain, some blame the world, and some decide to move forward anyway. That decision changes everything. Epictetus once taught that we suffer more from our opinions than from reality itself. Think about how powerful that idea is. Maybe your life isn't falling apart. Maybe your interpretation of your situation is what's creating suffering. You tell yourself you're behind. You tell yourself you're a failure. You tell yourself you've wasted too much time. You tell yourself everyone else has figured life out. But are those facts, or are they stories? Because the stories you tell yourself become the reality you experience. The person who believes their life is over stops trying. The person who believes their life is beginning keeps moving. The circumstances may be identical. The mindset is completely different, and mindset changes destiny. But there is another truth that most people avoid. Sometimes feeling lost comes from chasing goals that were never truly yours. Maybe you spent years trying to impress people. Maybe you pursued a career because society approved of it. Maybe you stayed in relationships because you feared loneliness. Maybe you followed expectations instead of purpose, and now your soul is quietly asking a difficult question. Whose life am I actually living? That question is uncomfortable, but it can also be liberating, because the moment you stop living for approval, you begin living for truth. And that is where real transformation starts. Yet there is one more lesson you must understand before everything begins to make sense. The very thing causing your pain today may become the reason for your strength tomorrow. And once you see how the Stoics transformed suffering into power, you will never look at your struggles the same way again. Most people spend their lives trying to escape discomfort. The Stoics spent their lives trying to understand it. That single difference separates ordinary people from extraordinary ones. Think about every major transformation that has ever happened in your life. The moments that made you stronger were rarely comfortable. The lessons that changed you rarely arrived during easy times. The confidence you gained was usually built through challenges. Yet when suffering appears, the first instinct of the human mind is resistance. We ask questions like, why is this happening to me, or when will this end? But the Stoics asked a different question. What is this experience trying to teach me? That question changes everything, because when you stop seeing pain as punishment and start seeing it as training, your entire relationship with life begins to shift. Imagine two people losing their jobs on the same day. The first person sees it as proof that life is unfair. They become bitter. They blame others. They replay the event over and over. Months later, they are still trapped in the same emotional prison. The second person experiences the same loss, but interprets it differently. They see it as an opportunity to reinvent themselves. They begin learning. They begin adapting. They begin moving forward. Years later, they look back and realize that what seemed like a disaster was actually a turning point. The event was identical. The interpretation was different, and that interpretation shaped their future. This is why Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that events are neutral. It is our judgment of events that creates suffering. Most people hear that idea and immediately resist it. They think surely some situations are objectively terrible, and of course some experiences are painful. The Stoics never denied pain. They simply understood that pain and destruction are not the same thing. You can experience pain without being destroyed by it. You can experience failure without becoming a failure. You can experience rejection without becoming unworthy. You can experience loneliness without becoming broken, but only if you refuse to let temporary circumstances define your identity. That is one of the greatest dangers when people feel lost. They begin confusing their situation with who they are. They say things like, "I am a failure," but failure is an event, not an identity. They say, "I am lost," but feeling lost is a temporary experience, not a permanent label. They say, "I have no purpose." But purpose is not something you discover once and keep forever. Purpose is something you build through action. The problem is that modern culture has convinced people that purpose arrives like lightning. One day you suddenly discover your calling and everything becomes clear. But real life is rarely like that. Most people discover purpose through experimentation. They try, they fail, they adjust, they learn, and eventually patterns begin to emerge. The tragedy is that many people quit before those patterns appear. They abandon the journey because they expected immediate answers. Seneca understood this better than almost anyone. He wrote that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Notice what he did not say. He did not say, "Luck is waiting." He did not say, "Luck is wishing." He did not say, "Luck is hoping." Preparation requires action. Movement, effort, persistence, even when results are invisible, and that is where most people give up. Not because they lack ability, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack potential. They give up because they become discouraged by the gap between effort and reward. Think about a seed buried beneath the soil. For weeks, there may be no visible progress. Nothing appears to be happening. But beneath the surface, an entire process is unfolding. Roots are growing. Foundations are forming. Strength is developing. Then one day the plant breaks through the surface. People celebrate the visible result. They ignore the invisible preparation. Your life works the same way. Many of the changes happening inside you right now cannot yet be seen. The discipline you are building, the resilience you are developing, the wisdom you are gaining, the self-awareness you are creating. These things often remain invisible until the moment they are needed most. That is why you must be careful about judging your progress too early. A person can look successful and be miserable. A person can look lost and be growing rapidly. Appearances are deceptive. The Stoics knew that the most important growth often happens internally, long before it becomes visible externally. But there is another reason people feel lost, and this reason is rarely discussed. Many people are exhausted from carrying expectations that were never theirs to begin with. From childhood, we are taught what success should look like: a certain career, a certain income, a certain lifestyle, a certain timeline, and without realizing it, we begin measuring our worth against those standards. Then one day we wake up and realize something terrifying. We climbed a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. We spent years chasing goals that never brought fulfillment. We achieved things that failed to satisfy us, and now we feel empty despite having what we thought we wanted. This experience is far more common than people realize. Some of the most successful individuals in the world secretly feel lost, because achievement and meaning are not the same thing. You can achieve many things and still feel disconnected from yourself. That is why Stoicism places such importance on virtue. The Stoics believed the highest goal was not wealth, not status, not popularity, not power. The highest goal was character, because external success can be taken away. Money disappears, fame fades, careers change, relationships end, health declines, but character remains. The person who develops courage remains courageous. The person who develops discipline remains disciplined. The person who develops wisdom remains wise, and these qualities become anchors during life's storms. When everything else changes, they remain. This is why people who build their identity around external things often feel lost when those things disappear. The athlete who loses their career, the executive who loses their position, the influencer who loses attention, the entrepreneur whose business fails. If their entire identity was attached to those roles, they feel destroyed. But the Stoic asks a different question. Who am I without the title? Who am I without the applause? Who am I without the validation? Because the answer to that question reveals your true foundation. And that foundation matters more than any achievement. Now imagine waking up tomorrow with complete certainty that nobody is coming to save you. No mentor, no perfect opportunity, no magical breakthrough, no sudden rescue. At first, that idea sounds frightening, but it is actually liberating, because once you stop waiting for rescue, you begin taking responsibility, and responsibility is where power begins. Many people remain stuck because they are waiting for motivation, waiting for confidence, waiting for ideal circumstances, waiting for someone to believe in them. But life rewards movement, not waiting. Action creates opportunities that waiting never will. This does not mean reckless action. It means consistent action, small daily actions repeated over time. The person who reads 10 pages every day, the person who exercises even when they don't feel like it, the person who continues learning despite uncertainty, the person who keeps showing up. Those actions seem insignificant in the moment, but years later they create extraordinary results. Because destiny is rarely shaped by dramatic decisions. More often, it is shaped by ordinary habits repeated consistently. This is why discipline is so powerful. Motivation is temporary. Discipline remains. Feelings change. Discipline remains. Circumstances change. Discipline remains. And when you feel lost, discipline becomes your compass. Not because it immediately provides answers, but because it keeps you moving while answers are being formed. Every day you continue moving forward. Despite uncertainty, you become stronger than the version of yourself who wanted to quit. Every day you continue, despite confusion. You prove that your future matters more than your current emotions, and that changes something deep within you. Slowly, your self-respect begins to return. Slowly, your confidence begins to grow. Slowly, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is lost. You begin seeing yourself as someone who is learning, and those two identities lead to completely different futures. But there is one final trap that keeps millions of people stuck in confusion for years. A trap so subtle that most never recognize it. And once you understand it, you will never view your struggles the same way again. That final trap is comparison. It destroys more dreams than failure ever could, because failure can teach you. Failure can strengthen you. Failure can redirect you, but comparison quietly convinces you that your journey is already over before it has even begun. Every day, millions of people wake up and immediately measure themselves against someone else. Someone richer, someone younger, someone more successful, someone more attractive, someone further ahead. And without realizing it, they begin fighting a battle they can never win. Because there will always be someone ahead of you in some area of life. Always. The Stoics understood something that modern society desperately needs to remember. Your life is not a competition against other people. It is a relationship with yourself. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself not to waste energy thinking about what others were doing. Instead, he focused on one question. Am I becoming a better version of myself? That question creates freedom, because the moment you stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20, you begin reclaiming your power. Think about how many people have delayed their dreams because they felt behind. How many businesses were never started. How many books were never written. How many opportunities were never pursued? How many relationships were never explored? Not because people lacked ability, but because they believed they were too late, too old, too inexperienced, too far behind. The reality is that some of the most remarkable transformations in history happened long after people believed their best years were over. Colonel Sanders was in his 60s before building what became a global empire. Countless authors faced rejection for years before publishing their breakthrough work. Many entrepreneurs failed repeatedly before finding success. The timeline was different. The outcome was extraordinary. Your journey does not need to look like anyone else's. In fact, it shouldn't, because your path is uniquely yours. The moment you accept that truth, a tremendous weight begins to disappear. You stop racing, you stop panicking, you stop forcing, and for the first time, you begin moving with intention. But there is another challenge that appears when people feel lost. Loneliness, not physical loneliness, emotional loneliness. The feeling that nobody understands what you are going through. The feeling that everyone else seems certain while you remain confused. The feeling that you are carrying invisible battles nobody can see. This experience can be incredibly painful, yet it is also far more common than most people realize. Some of the strongest people you know have felt exactly the same way. The difference is that they continued walking through the darkness instead of building a home there. Because loneliness often creates a dangerous illusion. It convinces you that you are alone in your struggle. But throughout history, countless men and women have faced uncertainty. Countless people have questioned themselves. Countless people have stood at crossroads, wondering what comes next. And many of them eventually discovered that uncertainty was not the end of their story. It was the beginning. The reason this matters is because your mind cannot always be trusted, especially during difficult seasons. When people feel lost, they often assume every thought they have is true. They believe every fear, every doubt, every insecurity, every worst-case scenario. But Epictetus warned against this centuries ago. He taught that we must examine our impressions before accepting them. In modern language, that means questioning your thoughts instead of automatically believing them. Imagine your mind telling you that your future is hopeless. Where is the evidence? Imagine your mind telling you that you have already wasted too much time. Compared to what? Imagine your mind telling you that you will never figure things out. Can you know that for certain? Most fears collapse when examined carefully. Yet many people spend years obeying thoughts they never challenged, and those thoughts become invisible prisons. The Stoic learns to create distance. A thought appears. Instead of immediately accepting it, they observe it, they question it, they test it. This simple habit creates enormous emotional freedom, because not every thought deserves your belief. Not every emotion deserves your obedience. Not every fear deserves your attention. And once you understand that, your inner world begins to change. Now consider this. What if the reason you feel lost is not because you lack direction? What if it is because you have outgrown your current life? That possibility changes everything. Growth often feels like confusion. When old habits no longer satisfy you, when old environments feel restrictive, when old conversations become empty, when old identities begin to crumble, the transition feels uncomfortable. You no longer fit where you used to belong, yet you have not fully become who you are meant to be. This creates a strange in-between state, a state where the old version of you is disappearing while the new version has not fully emerged. Many people panic during this phase. They assume something is wrong, but often something is finally going right. The caterpillar must dissolve before becoming a butterfly. The seed must break before becoming a tree. The old self must die before the new self can emerge. Transformation rarely feels comfortable. Transformation often feels like chaos. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that growth requires letting go of illusions, letting go of false identities, letting go of approval, letting go of control. And every time you release something that no longer serves you, space is created for something greater. That process is happening right now, whether you realize it or not. The struggles you face, the questions you ask, the uncertainty you feel. These experiences may be shaping you in ways you cannot yet see. One day you may look back and realize that the season you wanted to escape was actually preparing you for everything that followed. That realization changes how you view hardship. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is this preparing me for?" That single question transforms suffering into strength. And strength creates resilience. Resilience creates confidence. Confidence creates action. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates transformation. That is how lives change, not overnight, not through motivation alone, but through consistent choices made despite uncertainty. And now we arrive at the most important lesson of all. Your life does not need to be fully figured out today. You do not need every answer. You do not need complete certainty. You do not need a perfect plan. You only need enough courage to take the next step. That is it. One step, then another, then another. The future reveals itself to those who continue moving, not to those who remain frozen. Years from now, you will not regret every mistake you made. You will regret the opportunities you never pursued, the conversations you never had, the risks you never took, the dreams you abandoned because fear convinced you to wait. Do not let that become your story, because despite everything you have experienced, despite every setback, despite every disappointment, despite every moment of confusion, you are still here. You are still breathing, you are still learning, you are still growing, and that means your story is not finished, not even close. The fact that you feel lost today does not mean you will feel lost forever. The fact that you are struggling today does not mean you will struggle forever. The fact that you cannot see the path today does not mean the path does not exist. Sometimes life reveals only the next step because that is all you need. Trust the process. Trust your ability to adapt. Trust your ability to learn. Trust your ability to rise. The same strength that carried you through every difficult chapter of your life still exists within you. It has not disappeared. It is waiting for you to stop doubting yourself, waiting for you to stop seeking permission, waiting for you to stop believing the lies fear keeps repeating. The Stoics understood a truth that remains timeless. You are stronger than you think, more resilient than you realize, more capable than you believe, and your future will not be determined by what happened to you. It will be determined by what you choose to do next. So if you feel lost right now, remember this: feeling lost is not the end of the journey. It is often the beginning of a new one, a wiser one, a stronger one, a more authentic one. Keep moving. Keep learning. Keep growing. And one day you will look back at this chapter and realize that the moment you thought you were lost was actually the moment you began finding yourself. If this message resonated with you, write "I will keep moving" in the comments below. Let that be your declaration. Let that be your commitment. And if you want more timeless Stoic wisdom that helps you master your mind, build unshakable confidence, and create a life of purpose, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the strongest version of yourself is still being built, and your greatest chapter may be closer than you think.